I was the reliable one, the nice one, the one who answered every message, showed up early, stayed late. I kept everyone else's life together, while mine slowly fell apart. Until one day, I said nothing. I disappeared, and for the first time, I could hear my own voice again. It started with small things, saying yes when I wanted to say no, offering help before anyone asked. I thought I was being kind, but really, I was trying not to be a burden. I said, "I'm fine," even when I was breaking. I smiled through the headaches, laughed through the tension, and when people said, "I don't know what I'd do without you," I wore that like a badge. But inside, I was disappearing. I remember one day I stayed late at work to finish someone else's project. My own deadline was the next morning. I hadn't eaten. I hadn't slept. I sat at my desk in the dark, the whole office empty, and stared at my screen. My hands were on the keyboard, but I couldn't move. I thought, why did I say yes again? Why can't I just say I'm tired? But then another voice answered, because they need you. Because this is who you are. And that was the lie I kept believing, that being useful was the same as being loved. Another time, I got home and stood in the kitchen, staring at the fridge door for 10 minutes. I thought, I should eat something, but my body didn't move. My phone buzzed. A message from a friend. "Hey, can you talk?" My hands typed, "Of course," before my brain could say, "Not tonight." Even when I had nothing left to give, I gave anyway. It happened on a Tuesday, just a normal day. I was supposed to meet a friend for coffee, then help my coworker with a report, then call my mom. I had said yes to all of it, like always. But that morning, I couldn't get out of bed. My eyes opened, but my body felt like stone. My heart was racing, but I hadn't even moved. I stared at the ceiling and felt the tears before I understood why. There was no dramatic reason, no big event, just emptiness. I had nothing left. My phone buzzed on the table. I didn't even look. Another message. Another, "Can you help?" Another, "Are you free?" And for the first time in forever, I didn't answer. I turned off the phone, curled into the blanket, and whispered, "I can't do this anymore." Not because I didn't care, but because I finally realized I never gave myself the care I gave to everyone else. That morning, I didn't get up, but something inside me finally woke up. I think it started when I was little. My dad worked late. My mom was always tired. If I wanted peace in the house, I had to be the good one. I learned to smile, say sorry, clean up the mess, even when I didn't make it. I learned that being helpful meant being loved. That if I made things easier for everyone else, maybe they wouldn't be so angry. Maybe they'd stay. And it worked. Teachers liked me, friends liked me. I was the easy one. Quiet, polite, always available. But somewhere along the way, I forgot how to ask for what I needed. I forgot what I even wanted because being the good one became more important than being me. I remember the first time I said no. I was 10. My cousin wanted to borrow my new markers. I said, "Not today. I just got them." She ran to my aunt crying. 5 minutes later, I was being scolded for being selfish. I tried to explain. I wasn't trying to be mean. But no one listened. The markers were taken from me anyway. And I sat there, feeling small, like I had done something terrible just for setting a boundary. That day, I made a decision. It's safer to say yes, even when I want to say no, even when it hurts. In high school, I was the good kid. Teachers loved me. I stayed late to clean up, took extra responsibilities, never complained. My friends? They'd text last minute asking me to cover for them, do their part of the project, explain homework I barely had time to finish myself. I always said yes. I thought it meant they liked me. I didn't realize they liked what I did for them, not who I was. But back then, being needed felt like love, so I gave more, until I had nothing left for me. I was 22, working my first real job. My coworker Sarah came in late again. She dropped a stack of files on my desk. "Hey, could you finish these for me? I have a dentist appointment." She didn't ask. She assumed. I nodded, like always. My inbox was already full. My coffee was cold. My head hurt. But no one noticed. Because I never said anything. I was the helpful one, the reliable one, the one who always said yes. And slowly, I realized something. People weren't taking advantage of me. They just believed the story I told them, that I don't need help, that I'm fine, even when I'm drowning. A few weeks later, my manager asked me to stay late. "It's just a couple hours. You're always so good about it." My mouth opened, but the word caught in my throat. I wanted to say no. I needed to say no. I hadn't eaten dinner. My sister was waiting for me. My chest felt tight. But then I saw his face. That slight frown, the raised eyebrow, and suddenly, I wasn't just saying no to overtime. I was saying no to being dependable. No to being the one they could count on. Guilt hit me like a wave. "Okay," I said, smiling like always. I stayed. Again. And when I walked to my car at 9:30 p.m., I cried. Not because I was tired, but because I had betrayed myself. Again. One night, I looked at my calendar. Every single day was filled. Meetings, favors, errands, work. None of it for me. My gym shoes sat untouched. My journal blank since March. My friends? I hadn't seen them in weeks. I thought about all the people I had helped, all the times I said yes, and then I asked myself, has anyone noticed I'm not okay? The answer wasn't just no, it was worse. No one had even asked. I had become invisible unless I was doing something for someone else. That was the moment I knew. If I didn't stop this, it was going to break me. I was walking out of the office when I saw her. Rachel. New intern, bright smile, calm energy. Our manager asked her to stay late. Same tone, same look, and she said, "Sorry, I've got plans tonight. Can't do it." No apology in her voice, no nervous laugh, just a clear, simple no. I waited for the fallout, the awkward silence, the guilt trip, but it never came. He just nodded and said, "Okay, have a good night." That was it. I stood there frozen. She said no, and the world didn't end. I smiled, but my stomach twisted. A few days later, my friend Mia texted, "Hey, you've been quiet. Everything okay?" I stared at the message. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I wanted to say, "No, I'm drowning. I don't even know who I am anymore." But instead, I typed, "Yeah, just busy. All good," and hit send. My heart sank the moment it delivered. Why did I do that? Why couldn't I just be honest? Mia was kind. She would have listened. But I didn't know how to be cared for. I only knew how to be useful. That weekend, my coworker texted, "Hey, can you cover my shift on Saturday? Just one time." I stared at the message. My calendar was full. My body was tired. My chest felt tight just thinking about it. I typed, "I'd love to help, but I really need the weekend to rest." My finger hovered over send. Deep breath. Tap. 5 minutes later. You're seriously the only one I can ask." My stomach flipped. I felt selfish, mean, like I had done something wrong. So I caved. "Okay, I'll do it." And just like that, another piece of myself disappeared. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that text. "You're seriously the only one I can ask." The way it echoed in my head, not just their words, but all the others. "You're so reliable. You always come through. You're the strong one." I got out of bed, grabbed my journal, and sat on the floor. Page 1, blank. Page 2, "I'm so tired." Then the words poured out. I don't know who I am outside of helping people. I say yes even when I want to scream no. If I'm not useful, will anyone still love me? I didn't even know I was crying until my tears smudged the ink. It wasn't loud, just quiet shaking, a slow unraveling. And for the first time, I let it happen. The next morning, I woke up feeling raw, but before I could even finish brushing my teeth, my phone buzzed. "Hey, sorry to ask last minute. Can you cover my shift again? You're a lifesaver." I stared at it. My thumb hovered over the screen. My chest was still tight from last night. I could still feel the weight of everything I wrote. But somehow my fingers typed, "Sure, no problem." I stared at the smiley face. Why did I add that? I didn't feel like smiling, but I pressed send anyway. Because even after all that pain, being needed still felt safer than being honest. And deep down, I still didn't know who I was without being useful. That shift was the one that broke me. It was supposed to be 4 hours, but someone called out, and someone else was too tired. So I stayed, like always. 8 hours later,
I was still standing. My legs hurt, my head ached. I hadn't eaten since breakfast. But what really cracked me was when my manager said, "Thanks for stepping up. You're the only one I can really count on." I forced a smile, but inside, something snapped. I wasn't proud. I wasn't grateful. I was angry. Not at him, at me, for saying yes, for never setting boundaries, for becoming everyone's safety net while no one even noticed I was falling. I went home, closed the door, sat on the floor, and cried. Not the quiet, movie scene kind of cry, the ugly kind. The kind you feel in your chest. The kind that says, "I can't do this anymore." The next morning, I didn't rush. I didn't check my phone. I didn't rehearse how to explain myself. I just sat. A cup of tea, a notebook, and finally some silence. For the first time in forever, I asked myself, what do I want? Not what they expect, not what keeps the peace, not what makes me good. What do I want? The question felt uncomfortable, like trying on a new outfit that didn't quite fit yet. But I wrote anyway. And as the page filled, something inside me softened. I wasn't selfish. I was exhausted. I wasn't dramatic. I was depleted. And maybe, just maybe, I didn't need to explain that to anyone. Maybe I could just know it. And that would be enough. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed. "Can you cover for me tonight?" No hi, no how are you, just the usual last-minute ask from a coworker who always disappeared when I needed help. Normally, I'd say yes, of course, with a smiley face, then scramble to rearrange my life, but this time I stared at the message. My thumb hovered over the screen. My heart raced like I was doing something wrong. Then I typed, "Sorry, I can't." That was it. No reason, no guilt, just a boundary. I set my phone down and waited for the wave of regret. But it never came. Only quiet. Only peace. At first, the silence felt strange, like I had missed a step on the stairs. No angry reply, no guilt trip, just stillness. I kept checking my phone, half expecting a follow-up message, some snarky comment, but it never came. That quiet, it didn't feel empty. It felt clean, like I had cleared space in my brain where their needs used to live. I sat there for a moment, staring out the window, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was breathing in my own life, not someone else's schedule. After that, I stopped rushing to fill the gaps. In conversations, I paused more. If someone asked me to help with something, I didn't jump in right away. I let the silence stretch just enough to think, do I actually want to do this? It freaked people out at first. They weren't used to me having a pause button. "You okay? You're so quiet today." But I was more than okay. I was thinking. I was deciding. Not reacting, not performing. I wasn't trying to earn approval anymore. I was trying to feel okay in my own skin, and silence gave me space to do that. It didn't happen all at once, but little by little, I noticed the change. I wasn't exhausted after every conversation. I didn't feel the need to apologize after every opinion. People started treating me differently, not because I was louder, but because I was clearer. I set boundaries. I said no, and I didn't explain it with a 10-minute speech. At work, I stopped volunteering for everything. I did my job well, and then I went home. At home, I stopped answering texts right away. Sometimes I didn't answer at all. Not out of spite, just peace. The world didn't end. My life didn't fall apart. Actually, things got quieter. And in that quiet, I found something I didn't know I'd lost. Myself. One afternoon, a coworker popped into my office, frantic, as usual. "Can you cover my shift on Friday? I have this thing, and I know you're always willing." The old me would have smiled, nodded, rearranged my life to fix hers. But this time, I paused. I looked at my calendar, I looked at her, and I said, "I'm sorry, I can't." Her face froze, like she'd just seen a ghost. "Oh, okay," she said, but her tone, not okay. She walked out, and for a moment I felt that old guilt crawling in, the need to chase after her, to explain. But I didn't move. I sat with the discomfort, and then something beautiful happened. I didn't die. She didn't die. The world moved on, and I kept my Friday, my plans, my peace. That tiny no, it felt like the biggest yes of my life. A few weeks later, my friend Maya called me, crying.
"Everything's falling apart," she said. "I don't know who else to call." I took a breath. I didn't rush. I didn't panic.
I said, "I'm here. I can talk for the next 30 minutes. Let's figure out a first step together." She paused. Then she whispered, "Thank you." And we talked. I didn't fix everything. I didn't promise more than I could give. But I showed up with my full heart, not a burned out version of me trying to save the world. And that felt right. I used to think helping meant giving everything. Now I know it means giving what you can, without setting yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. That night, I walked home alone. No music, no messages, just the sound of my footsteps and the city breathing around me. I stopped by a small cafe, ordered tea, sat by the window, and for the first time in a long time, I felt calm. Not because everything was perfect, but because I wasn't pretending anymore. I pulled out my notebook, the one I used to fill with to-do lists and apologies. This time, I wrote, "I showed up for myself today." And that was enough. Maybe you're like me. Maybe you've spent years trying to be everything for everyone, smiling when you're exhausted, saying yes when your heart whispers no. And maybe, like me, you're finally wondering, what would happen if I chose me? Not in a loud way, not with anger, just quietly.
You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to earn rest. You just have to listen to your own voice and trust that it's enough. Because when you focus only on yourself and stay silent long enough to hear what you truly need, that's where healing begins. If this story made you feel seen, share it with someone who needs to hear it too. You never know who might need the reminder. You're allowed to choose peace.
If you enjoyed this lesson, click here for another learning video.